The psychology of procrastination. Why we delay what matters most. Procrastination is usually described as a time management problem. But that description is wrong. If procrastination were about time, then reminders, calendars, and productivity apps would have solved it by now. Yet people who procrastinate often know exactly what they need to do. They know why it matters. They know when it should be done. And still, they delay. So procrastination isn't about laziness. It isn't about discipline. And it isn't even about motivation. It's about psychology. Procrastination is an emotional regulation problem. At its core, procrastination is a way of coping with discomfort. When we face a task that feels boring, overwhelming, confusing, or threatening, our brain reacts emotionally before it reacts rationally. That task becomes associated with stress, self-doubt, or fear of failure. And the brain has one primary goal: avoid pain. So instead of doing the task, we do something else. Something easier. Something familiar. Something that gives instant relief. Scrolling. Gaming. Watching videos. Tidying things that don't matter. This isn't a conscious decision. It's emotional self-soothing. For a moment, the discomfort disappears. And the brain learns a dangerous lesson. Avoiding this task makes me feel better. That's how procrastination becomes a habit. Why motivation fails. Most people believe they procrastinate because they don't feel motivated. But motivation is unreliable by design. The brain doesn't prioritize long-term rewards. It prioritizes short-term emotional comfort. Doing important work usually offers delayed benefits. Success later. Relief later. Pride later. But procrastination offers immediate relief now. From a survival perspective, the brain chooses now over later every time. That's why waiting to feel motivated doesn't work. Motivation often comes after action, not before it. The role of fear, even when you don't notice it. Procrastination is often driven by fear, but not the obvious kind. Not fear of danger, fear of identity. Fear of failing and confirming self-doubt. Fear of succeeding and raising expectations. Fear of discovering you're not as capable as you hoped. Fear of doing your best and still falling short. So the brain protects you by delaying. As long as the task isn't done, your self-image remains safe. Procrastination becomes a shield. Why perfectionists procrastinate the most? Ironically, people who care the most often procrastinate the hardest. Perfectionism creates impossible standards. And impossible standards create paralysis. When starting feels like committing to perfection, the safest move is to not start at all. So perfectionism disguises itself as procrastination, but underneath it is fear of imperfection. Time doesn't fix procrastination, pressure does. Many procrastinators notice something strange. They work best at the last minute. This happens because urgency temporarily overrides emotion. When a deadline becomes unavoidable, fear of consequences becomes stronger than fear of discomfort. The brain switches into survival mode. But relying on pressure comes at a cost. Chronic stress, guilt cycles, burnout, lower quality work. It works, but it damages you slowly. The guilt trap. After procrastinating, guilt appears. And guilt feels productive, but it isn't. Guilt doesn't push you toward action, it pushes you toward avoidance. The task now carries even more emotional weight. Shame. Self-criticism. Anxiety. So you procrastinate again to escape the guilt. This is how procrastination becomes a loop. Discomfort, avoidance, guilt, more discomfort, more avoidance. Breaking the loop requires addressing emotion, not time. The real solution: reducing emotional friction. People often ask for discipline hacks, but discipline alone isn't enough. The real solution is lowering the emotional cost of starting. This means making tasks smaller than your brain thinks they should be. Removing the expectation of perfection. allowing bad first versions. Focusing on starting, not finishing. When a task feels safe, the brain stops resisting. Action changes emotion, not the other way around. One of the most misunderstood ideas in productivity is this: you don't act because you feel ready. You feel ready because you act. Action creates clarity. Action creates momentum. Action creates motivation. Waiting for the perfect emotional state keeps you stuck. A different way to see procrastination. Procrastination isn't your enemy. It's a signal. It's your brain saying, "This feels threatening. This feels overwhelming. This feels unclear." When you listen to that signal instead of fighting it, procrastination loses its power. Not by force, but by understanding. Final thought. You're not lazy. You're not broken. And you're not weak. You're human with a brain designed to avoid discomfort. And once you stop trying to overpower that brain and start working with it, procrastination stops being a mystery. It becomes manageable.